YouTube, in this video, I want to talk about what's next for the Los Angeles Clippers in the 2024 offseason after being defeated by the Dallas Mavericks in the first round of the NBA playoffs. What's their offseason look like? Are there some big name players in this organization walking out the door this offseason, or perhaps coming in, or perhaps sticking around? Let's talk about all that in this video and more. Let's get right into it, folks. So, with the James Harden trade, I've covered extensively on this channel right around the time that it happened. I'm a 76ers fan, so it was big news for me and my fan base, as well as Clippers fans. And, the Clippers needed a point guard, and I think it was a good move overall for their team. They only gave up some veteran role players, and you gave up some draft picks, right? You took a shot at Harden, and I must say it was going pretty well until around the final stretch of the regular season, and all of a sudden things got pretty messy, right? But I will say, even from my biased 76ers fan perspective of Harden and the Clippers overall, I think it wasn't a bad decision to make at the time. I still don't think it was a bad decision to make trading for Harden, and I do think if Kawhi Leonard had been healthy for your playoff run, the Clippers could still be in the playoffs right now as we speak. I think there's a good chance of that. I think the Mavs were a better team, but I also think if Kawhi, who is playing at maybe the best level he's ever been at in his career offensively, if he had been healthy for that playoff run, things would have been entirely different. I truly believe that. So all that being said, I think the Clippers are in trouble going into this offseason. They have a lot of big time franchise altering questions that need to be answered in regards to their roster and their cap situation and free agency. Now, the big ticket item on this list is Paul George. Is he going to be sticking around in LA? Gut reaction, I would probably say no, honestly. I think Paul George, if he was going to sign an extension, he would have signed it by now. He can probably get a lot more money in free agency. It doesn't seem like the Clippers want to pay him a max contract, which is understandable for a player of his age. And although Paul George is a great player in the NBA, still at, I believe, 34 years old, had a great season and still capable of being a number 2 option on a championship level team. I truly believe that. With Kawhi Leonard signing a massive extension in hopes that he can be healthy in the future for many more playoff runs, it's a legitimate question. Do the Clippers even need Paul George with what they have on the roster right now? Well, I think that depends on if James Harden signs an extension. James Harden actually, all things considered, played pretty good basketball this season. He had some big moments in the playoffs. He had some bad moments in the playoffs. That's nothing new. We're expecting that from James Harden, but I do think he was an overall positive for this team in 2024. If you can't retain him, and if he wants, similar money to what Paul George is going to get, I think that's a real issue. I don't think James Harden at this point in his career is worth that amount of money, but you might have to pay him something similar to what he's earning now, around $30 million a year, to retain James Harden for at least next year, right? So that's going to be the 2 big ticket items, right? Paul George and James Harden. If those guys stick around, the Clippers are right in the race again in the Western Conference. Doesn't look like Paul George is going to stick around. We still don't know much about Harden. Russell Westbrook also could be on the move, but I think these questions might not be as important as Clippers fans might think just on paper when hearing these big time Hall of Fame names and hearing that they might leave the Clippers, right? Something I think the Clippers traded away in the Harden trade that they really could have used towards the end of the season was depth, right? And the Clippers, they sold a lot of depth for Harden and weren't really able to make it up, in the buyout market or anything like that. They had just a lack of, really solid role players when compared to other teams in the West. And I think if Paul George and James Harden walk in free agency, or at least Paul George, let's just say Paul George leaves LA, signs a max somewhere else, right? Maybe with my Sixers, who knows? So let's just say that happens, and then you get Harden back on a similar deal to what he has now. Russell Westbrook walks as well. I think that's an opportunity for the Clippers to really flesh out this roster and, put all their chips on the table as far as surrounding Harden and Leonard with really, really solid role players who are versatile, right? You lack a lot of, I think, defensive versatility, size in the paint. Zubac had a really good year, and I think he's a above average NBA center. I actually like Zubac a lot, but the backup 5 was kind of an issue, and the wing and guard depth was also an issue as well, in my opinion. So you have a lot of really good shot creation offensively. You have Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Norman Powell. Russell Westbrook played like really, really good defense this year. He really transformed his defensive game this year. He was a really great defender, which was really surprising. I think that's a big, positive sign for him to be able to adapt this late in his career, similar to a Brook Lopez type thing, where he's a great offensive talent, sees that, it's not really working like that anymore in his career, so he has to adapt, and he did it. But I think Paul George, if he walks, which I expect him to, gives you an opportunity to attack the weaknesses on this team, which I think are 3-and-D guys, right? You need really good spot up shooters in a James Harden type system. If he's going to be controlling the ball most of the time, which it looks like he will be if he sticks around, you need really great catch and shoot guys, right? And you also need those guys to be able to be versatile defenders and athletic, right? So you need really good 3-and-D athletes that can play defense. I think that has to be priority number 1. Think of Terrence Mann, but on the wing, right? Amir Coffey actually was really good this year, something similar to what he is. I think he is the type of player you need more of, right? So you give up Batum in the Harden trade, which is a big win for my Sixers, but that's the type of player you need. You need some versatility defensively, a guy who can knock down a corner three or a catch and shoot opportunity, you could use a different type of big man, right? Or forward, just a guy in the paint that can block shots and provide solid rim protection and rebounding. I think that's another thing the Clippers really lacked, was an athletic big man or power forward who can catch lobs, rebound the ball, and protect the rim, right? Zubac is great, but he's just not that type of player defensively, right? And I think a guy like Clint Capella, who could be on the move from the Hawks, I think that's a guy, type of player or archetype that you could look at if you're the Clippers. We know those guys play really well in a James Harden-led offense, and I think that's the type of player the Clippers need to target. So shooters, 3-and-D wings, versatile defenders, and athletes, and especially towards the front court side of the lineup, I think that's what the Clippers need to target. And I think Paul George potentially leaving in free agency will give the Clippers a lot of resources to be able to attack those weaknesses for the team. Now, another thing the Clippers really need is youth. I think the Clippers trading away their draft picks, while it was the right decision to attack, the playmaking aspect of the team and, taking the ball out of PG and Kawhi's hands all the time to where they have to be the playmakers, I think that was a good move in trading for Harden. You also gave up a lot of draft picks, and infusion of youth on this team could really help them. Unfortunately, the Clippers don't have any picks. So maybe if Paul George decides not to walk in free agency, maybe you do a sign and trade type of thing where you get some draft picks out of it, right? That could be something that the Clippers could explore if he's not thrilled with the options on the open market. The Clippers need young players, they need shooters, they need depth, and I think Paul George potentially leaving, like I said, maybe he sticks around, gives them an opportunity. I actually think Paul George leaving is a good thing for the Clippers. I just don't think his skill set is of much use anymore on that team. Obviously, he's a great player, and any team would love to have Paul George, and any team would love to retain Paul George, including the Clippers, but at the price he's asking, it really limits you around your top other players. So I would expect Harden to re-sign, hopefully on a team-friendly deal, because let's be honest, he's not a max player anymore, and he hasn't been for quite some time. And if he takes less money, it flushes out the roster, and he needs a lot of help around him and a certain type of play style and system around him to be able to operate at his best. I think you need to give him the ability to do that. If you add Kawhi Leonard healthy, hopefully Kawhi can get healthy. That's another thing I think the Clippers need to prioritize, is figuring out a way, maybe a middle ground between what he did this year and last year, right? Maybe a middle ground between total load management and a minutes restriction and going all out in the regular season. I think there needs to be some kind of middle ground where you have to be able to get a high seed in the Western Conference, especially if you want to, make some noise in the West, but you also need him to be healthy in the playoffs, and we just haven't seen that in about 3 years now. So whatever happens this offseason has to, at the end of the day, be determined by Kawhi Leonard's health. So realistically, that's the most important thing. So all this stuff is useless if Kawhi can't be healthy in the playoffs. That's your number one guy. You just gave him a big extension. I think he deserves it, and he played some of the best basketball of his career offensively, like I said. But if he can't stay healthy for the playoffs, I don't care what you put around him, this team's not going to work. So that's kind of it for the Clippers. Like I said, I'll make it short and sweet. Once again, just a quick recap. I think the priorities need to be trying to extend Paul George for the littlest amount of money you can possible. Maybe he's not extending right now because he's trying to leverage that in free agency and see how much the Clippers are willing to give him. Like maybe he wants to stay with the Clippers, and this is his way of getting leverage in that regard, getting the best offer he can from the Clippers, somewhere close to a max, but it doesn't seem like the Clippers are willing to give him that after giving that to Kawhi Leonard. So that's priority number one, figuring out with Paul George, what that situation entails. Priority number two, if Paul George walks, retaining Harden, because, otherwise you're in a real tough spot if you lose both of those guys, right? Priority number three, let's say the most likely scenario happens where Paul George leaves and Harden stays. Now you need to attack the team's weaknesses in free agency and hopefully the draft if you can finagle some picks. There's not a lot more moves to be made if you're LA in terms of on the margins, right? You don't really have any more bargaining assets to be able to leverage some draft picks out of or some role players out of anymore. Your moves are kind of done on the margins. So somehow, some way, you need to be able to find some shooting, some defensive versatility, and some size and athleticism in the front court, in free agency, and the draft as best you can. And that'll be easier, like I said, if Paul George leaves, but it's still not going to be easy to get the right team around these guys. The Clippers have a lot of big decisions to make, and after those decisions are made, they need to be able to attack the weaknesses of this team, or else we're going to get the same result next year unless Kawhi Leonard, miraculously is healthy. And that's the biggest thing, regardless of all this stuff. The Clippers really need to make sure they find out a way where Kawhi Leonard, if everything goes right, there's no setbacks or anything, he can be healthy for a playoff series. Because now if Paul George leaves, your team is basically solely built around Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, and if one of those guys misses a game, it's an instant loss. Kawhi Leonard cannot afford to miss any more playoff games, man, and I really feel for Clippers fans because they had a really promising year this year. It's a real shame to see it end that way, but hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you guys let me know down in the comment section what you think the Clippers' next move should be. You think Paul George walks in free agency? Where do you think he goes? We'll talk about that maybe in a different video involving my 76ers, but what do you think the Clippers' next course of action should be? Do you agree with with me? Do you disagree? It's okay to disagree as long as it's not disrespectful. You know, we can all talk about basketball without insulting each other, right? We're gonna disagree on things. I understand that. I'm wrong all the time. Correct me if I am. Just don't, you know, be disrespectful about it. That's all I ask. We all love basketball here. That's the bottom line. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you guys drop a like if you did. It really helps out the channel. It helps new people find the video. So make sure you guys, if you did enjoy it, share it with as many people as you can, please. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, because I don't know if you know this, but we actually cover topics like this every day on this channel. We upload every day. It could be a topic like this. It could be about your favorite team in the next video. So make sure you guys subscribe and stick around. We're really trying to grow and grind every single day in this NBA community. This is the greatest sport in the world, and I just love basketball more than anything. So I want to share that with you guys. So hopefully you guys enjoy it too. And thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. I will catch you guys in the next video. Hopefully the Clippers, you know, everything goes right in their offseason. While I'm not a fan of, you know, James Harden anymore, or, you know, I'm not a Clippers fan by any means, but I do want every team to put their best foot forward in free agency. Obviously, I want the best result as an NBA fan that we can have for every team involved, even the Celtics. I'll catch you guys in the next one. This is your boy D-Haven. As always, peace.